There is a particular kind of absence that does not begin with silence. It begins with a voice saying it is fine, that it is on the way, that it does not know exactly where it is, but that it will find them. A voice that fills the phone for nearly an hour, describing what it sees, what it feels beneath its feet, the cold of the night in open fields. And then, without warning, without any prior sound to announce it, that voice says a single word and disappears. No dial tone, no static, just the abrupt end of something that was alive a moment before. That is what Brian and Annette Swanson experienced in the early hours of May 14th, 2008. And that is what has gone unanswered for more than 15 years. This is the case of Brandon Swanson. Brandon Lee Swanson was 19 years old when he disappeared. He was a first-year student at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in the city of Marshall, in the southwestern part of the state. He had grown up in that area. He knew the rural roads, the fields that stretch out between unmarked routes, the grain silos that appear suddenly on the flat horizon of that part of the country. By every account, he was a young man with no history of trouble, no documented substance issues, no known reason to want to vanish. On the night of May 13th, 2008, Brandon had been at a party in Lind, a small town a few miles from Marshall. At some point, he decided to head home. He got into his car, a 1994 Chevrolet Lumina, and took the rural roads back. He did not get far. Somewhere along the way, in the darkness of an unlit road, his car ended up in a ditch. It was not a serious crash. There was no high-speed impact, no injuries. The vehicle was stuck, but Brandon walked away unharmed. He had his phone, and he used it. The first call was to his parents. It was around 12:30 in the morning. He explained the situation. The car was in a ditch. He needed them to come get him. He said he was near Lind. Brian and Annette left immediately. They drove to the area, searched for the car, searched for their son. They found nothing. Brandon was still on the phone. He told them he could see them passing by, that they should flash their lights, but the lights he was seeing were not his parents' car, and his parents' car could not find him. Something in the geography of that night did not add up. Brandon was somewhere he did not believe himself to be. At one point, trying to locate him, Brian asked Brandon to aim his phone's flashlight toward the sky while he scanned the horizon from the car. He saw nothing. The location Brandon believed he was at was wrong. He was not near Lind. He was somewhere else in the county, though neither of them could determine exactly where. That was when Brandon decided to walk. That decision is one of the points that investigators and the family have returned to many times. It was not irrational on its own. Brandon thought he could get his bearings by moving, find some visible landmark, reach a house or a familiar road. The night was cold, but there were no extreme weather conditions. What there was darkness, open land, and a disorientation that Brandon had not yet fully grasped. He kept talking to his parents as he walked. For nearly an hour, his voice was present on the phone. He described what he saw: fields, what looked like lights in the distance, uneven ground. At some point, he said something that suggested he was getting close to somewhere. The signal was inconsistent, but the call held. Brian and Annette were still in the car, driving the rural roads, trying to find their son based on the details he gave. They could not locate him. It was approximately 12:59 in the morning when Brandon said his last word. The case records describe it as an exclamation. Some reports transcribe it as "oh." Others describe it as something shorter, almost a sound without a complete form. There is no consensus on exactly what it was. What is unanimous is what came next. The call dropped. Brian and Annette tried to call him back immediately. Brandon's phone rang. No one answered. They kept trying. Nothing. They called 911. What followed is one of the most documented and most criticized aspects of the case. When the Swansons reported their son missing that night, the initial response from Lyon County authorities was that they needed to wait. Standard policy for missing adults required that no formal search begin until 24 hours had passed. Brandon was 19 and legally an adult. There was no immediate evidence of danger, according to the judgment applied that night. The Swansons did not accept that answer, but they could not change it in that moment either. The formal search began the following day. That gap is one of the elements the family has publicly identified as potentially critical, though no one can say with certainty what difference an earlier response might have made. When the search operation began, it was extensive. Volunteer teams, tracking dogs, helicopters, and specialized personnel covered the area for weeks. The geography of southwestern Minnesota at that time of year presented its own challenges. The fields had been prepared for spring planting, vegetation was sparse, and the ground was wet. The drainage ditches that run through that agricultural region were both priority search zones and physical obstacles for the teams. Brandon's car was located. It was in a ditch along a rural road, but not near Lind as he had indicated. It was in a different area entirely, which confirmed that Brandon had not known precisely where he was that night. Finding the vehicle helped narrow the search area, but it did not lead to finding him. Brandon Swanson did not turn up, not in the first days, not in the weeks that followed, not after. Later investigations attempted to reconstruct his route during that hour of walking. The phone did not yield precise GPS data, and the cell towers in the area allowed only an approximate triangulation that did not meaningfully reduce the search zone. What is known is that the car was found near the Cottonwood River. That river appears in nearly every analysis of the case for concrete reasons. Its banks in that area have uneven terrain, dense vegetation in certain stretches, and varying depths. In spring, with accumulated snowmelt, the water level can be considerably higher than in other seasons. A man walking at night across a field with no clear reference points might not see the river until he was right on top of it. The hypothesis that Brandon fell into the cottonwood while walking and was carried away by the current is the one that authorities and several investigators have considered most consistent with the available evidence. Not because there is direct proof to confirm it, but because it would explain why, after exhaustive searches on land, no human trace was found anywhere in the area. But this hypothesis is not confirmed either. Bodies in rivers in that region sometimes surface downstream weeks or months later. In this case, none ever did. Underwater search teams explored sections of the Cottonwood. The results were negative. In 2009, Brandon's case had a direct impact on state legislation. The Minnesota legislature passed what has since been known as Brandon's Law, eliminating the 24-hour waiting period for initiating searches for missing adults when circumstances suggest danger. The law was actively championed by his parents, who turned what they had lived through that night into a concrete change for others. It is one of those cases where the absence leaves a mark before it leaves an answer. The law exists. Brandon does not. The years that followed brought periodic renewed attention to the case. The family maintained a consistent public presence. The case was covered by national media, podcasts, and investigative reporting. In 2022 and 2023, volunteer search groups conducted new expeditions using technology that had not been available in 2008. No concrete results. The case remains officially open in Lyon County. One question appears in every discussion of this case and has no documented answer. What did Brandon say in that last second? Whether it was surprise, whether it was fear, whether it was the beginning of a sentence that never got finished. The audio does not exist as a public record. It exists only in the memory of two people who were on the other end of the phone that morning and who have lived with that sound ever since. There was no body, no scene, no physical evidence of any kind that could establish what happened after the call ended. There is only a field, a night, a river nearby, and a voice that stopped without explanation. Brandon Swanson disappeared at 19 years old. He would be 35 today.